How hopeful are you about the future? The future of the world you live in, and your own future for today and tomorrow. And what efforts do you take to fan your flames of hope? Welcome to Flow Unleashed. I'm Cameron Norsworthy, and this is your podcast for human performance. Today's conversation explores a concept that is so fundamental to the human experience that we rarely pause to examine it scientifically. Hope. Hope is often treated as something abstract or sentimental, but in reality, hope may be one of the most powerful psychological forces shaping human behaviour, resilience, and our capacity to flourish. My guest today is Andreas Krafft, a researcher and lecturer at the University of St. Gallen and a leading scholar in the science of hope within the field of positive psychology, organisational psychology, and future studies. Dr. Krafft leads the Hope Barometer, an international research network examining how people across cultures think about the future and what gives them hope. The project now spans more than 15 countries and offers a fascinating window into how individuals and societies imagine and shape their futures. In this conversation, we explore why hope is not just a feeling, but a prerequisite for action. The 3 psychological elements required for hope to exist. Why modern societies are facing a growing crisis of lost positive prospects, particularly among young people. And how the brain's negativity bias can gradually erode hope and well-being. What global research from the Hope Barometer reveals about how difficult cultures experience hope and why loneliness may be one of the greatest enemies of hope. And why creating new positive narratives about the future may be essential for both personal and societal flourishing. At its core, this episode is about a powerful idea. Our hope shapes the world we build. When hope disappears, action disappears with it. But when hope is restored, people begin to imagine, act, and create again. So if you're ready to hope, then let's dive in.
Flow Unleashed.
Welcome to the show, Andreas.
Thank you for inviting me, Cameron.
My pleasure. A simple question for a probably complex answer, but why hope? Why have you dedicated so much time towards hope?
Well, hope is like anxiety. It's part of our human being. I think it's an existential phenomenon that we need in order to survive and to flourish and to live our lives. And I think it's relevant in all aspects of our lives. When we are facing some threats, or in our daily businesses, or when going to school, young people, they hope for having a degree or finding a good job. That means personally, it's very important in order to have a good life. And on the other hand, looking at what is happening nowadays in the world, I think we need a lot of hope, because especially when things don't go the way we wish, or when things are not as good as we imagine, or even bad, I think there is where hope is needed the most. I think we need hope, especially in dire situations, in situations where we are feeling helpless or overwhelmed, or when things don't go the way we need it, in crisis situations, or nowadays with all the environmental, political, societal turmoils that we are facing in the world. Especially in those situations, we need, let's say, not to lose hope, because if we lose hope, then we are, close to despair or indifference or just giving up. And I think hope is needed in order to not give up when we are facing that kind of problems.
And how would you describe hope? Like in my work at least, I've come across hope in a number of different perspectives of looking at hope and a number of different reasons. And one of the ones I love is almost like a definition of resilience, the nation of hope.
Yeah.
How would you describe hope?
Indeed, hope has been investigated, analyzed, studied from many different perspectives, from theology, from philosophy, from psychology. First of all, we have to become aware that hope is the condition for action. I mean, we need hope in order to do something. And this is the paradox, at the same time, we have to be aware that we are not always, that it's not always possible for us to change things in the way that we would like to go. That means hope is on the one hand the condition for action, and on the other hand, the recognition of our own limitations, to be aware that we have our limits and that we need other people. And this is the consequence of that we need other people in order to accomplish our hopes, being them the own personal hopes, but also the family within our families, or in our communities, or in the larger environment. And I say that there are some key aspects or common elements of hope that can be identified throughout all different forms of hope. I mean, it is something basically different if you hope for your own goals. You want to achieve something, for a new job, for example, or you want to write a book, or these are very individual, personal hopes. And those hopes are different from hopes like, for example, I hope for peace or for democracy in our country, or for the well-being of my family and my kids and so on. But there are common elements of hope. And first of all, we need to have a wish. We need to desire something. And this element, this wish, it's not easy to define or to realize what is really important to me. I think there is a lot of reflection that we need in order to define what is really what we really want. And especially with young people, I work a lot, not only at university, but also at schools with young people that they don't really know exactly what they should want. That means you need to you need to clarify firstly what makes sense to you, what is meaningful to you, what are your wishes and desires. So this is the first element. The second element is that we have to believe that what we are wishing for is at least possible. Sometimes it's not easy, maybe it's not even probable, because let's consider the situation of a person that received a diagnosis of some illness or difficult disease or whatever. But at least you have to you should believe that, for example, the cure of this illness or the release of it or some improvement at least should be possible, even though it's difficult and it's not easy. But this belief that something is possible, something that you are desiring is possible, gives you the strength, gives you the energy to do something about it and not to capitulate. However, you always, when something is important to you, the wish is something that is significant and meaningful, you will encounter setbacks and resistance and all kind of problems and difficulties on the road. That means the question is, okay, you can believe that is possible, but when facing all these negative situations during the times, the question is what keeps your belief alive? And this is the third element, is trust. Is trusting in maybe your own capabilities and possibilities, but also trusting other people, or maybe some larger instance that could be politics or other people, for example, physicians, doctors, nurses, in case of a disease, but also perhaps a higher power if you are a religious person or a spiritual person. That means that we need to develop trust that it would be possible to cope with those setbacks and all these difficulties that come on the road of achieving our wishes. I mean, that means basically we have these three elements. It is a wish or desire for something that is good for us and is meaningful and important. Secondly, the belief that it's possible, even though it could be difficult to achieve. And the third element is to trust possible resources, personal and also external resources, in order to overcome and cope with those difficulties. And this could be applied to, I mean, this appears in so many different situations. And like other phenomenon, like love, for example, you have so many different experiences of that, hope or love, that you cannot say it is always the same. The love that I feel for my wife, it's something different than the love that I feel for my job or for my kids or for other people that I know, for my students, for example. So it is so heterogeneous and so different that they are so, I mean, in case of hope, it's the same. It's something different to hope for something personal than to hope for my kids or to hope for our society becoming a better place to live in.
Yeah, and just to be clear, are those three things integral for hope to exist, or how are you integrating those three things with hope?
Yeah, I mean, hope at the end is, we say in philosophy, it's an emergent property that it's not reducible to other kind of experiences like courage or resilience or something else. But we need these three elements, at least, are necessary and sufficient, let's say, for developing hope. That means you need those conditions, you need these three elements, but this can manifest in so different ways, in so different situations, that it is impossible to say that there is one. Let's say I can give you an advice to do always the same in order to become hopeful. No, that's not possible, because the situations we are facing in life are so different that there is, there are so many different realities and possibilities that we have to face in order to become hopeful. But these three elements, let's come back, these three elements should be in place in some form in order to be able to be hopeful.
Yeah, I certainly see it in relation to, let's say, finding flow in a presentation or finding flow on a tennis court. We need to have the dream, we need to have the desire, we need to have that vision, then we need to believe that it's possible, and then we also need to be able to trust ourselves. And as soon as our team, the resources, the environment, that we can self-actualize in the moment. And the moment exactly. That hope becomes distinguished and that light flickers and that dies, then our ability to self-actualize or actualize as a group becomes so diminished. And why do you feel that hope is so necessary now? How, instead of being hopeful, for what reason And what research have you come across or do that makes you think that we are hopeless as a group and as individuals?
Yeah, I mean, basically people ask me, journalists especially, how would it be, or how is it possible in today's times to remain hopeful? Because so many things are happening in the world that are very, very dark and awful. And I answer always, I mean, exactly, especially in these times, it is necessary to prove that we can stay and remain hopeful. Because to be hopeful in good times, it's not a achievement. I mean, it's easy to be hopeful when everything runs smoothly and everything goes well. But hope is especially important and needed, and it will show up as in its value when things are not going well, and when we are facing all these kind of difficulties and crises and dire situations, especially since I would say since the pandemic in the 2020s, beginning of the 2020s, we started to face so many different crises in the world in general. That means the pandemic, then the wars, then the political turmoils, then all kind of conflicts and societal, economic crisis, and everything that is happening today all over the world is facing people with a lot of uncertainty, of helplessness, especially young people. I can see it at schools, in universities, and our own research shows, not only ours, it's many other surveys are showing that many people, especially young people, are, I would say, they are tired, they are frustrated, they have a lack of perspective, positive prospects about the future. They don't see how the world is developing. Well, they see that it's developing in the wrong way, into the wrong direction, and they feel overwhelmed because they are not able to do. Well, we feel we are not able to do anything about it, to change anything. So this combination of seeing or experiencing so many different crises on the one hand, and having the idea or the feeling that we are not able to do too much about them and in order to change something, is giving people this sense of helplessness and hopelessness and so on. But exactly during these times, hope is needed, because hope helps us to overcome those situations and to stand up and to fight, positively speaking, to do something, at least for ourselves, in order to continue. I don't know. I mean, there are very basic questions and basic ideas about young people asking themselves, should I form a family? Should I marry? Should I do a further education, a study or a professional training? And if the answer is no, because it doesn't make any sense or it doesn't help anything, further. So several people face the current situations with some frustration, and also, I would say, it's the lack of positive prospects that are hindering them to take over and do something with their lives positively. On the other hand, I would say hope is always present, because hope is so existential and so ingrained in our DNA that it would be impossible to live without hope. So hope is, even though we have the sense that we are losing it, it always comes up again, and we say, okay, now I have to do something and I have to change something, and that would be it is extremely important in order to overcome those feelings of helplessness and of hopelessness.
Yeah, it's interesting to think for a second of where does it come from. It's so innate, so existential, that it feels so hardwired to who we are, and we can lose all hope. And then just the slightest flicker can start it up again and can start to create belief and action and prospects and so forth. And we can feel as humans hopeless. I'll never be able to afford a house because it's just beyond. Or I will never find love because all my past experience have suggested otherwise. I will never be able to have kids, let alone find someone to truly love, as I have once dreamt. And we can have this hopelessness that lives with us and lives within a lot of people for different scenarios. And some of that can be directed at governance and political factors, and other it can be directed at cultural principles that we may feel constrained by or suppressed by, and others are the choices we make in life and the perspectives we have. But it seems that with a quarter of the population facing a mental health related suffering and the rates of anxiety and depression so high, that there is this hopelessness that lives in so many of us and so many people.
I mean, there is one phenomenon that is always present in our human beings, that is that we focus most of the times on negative aspects and negative situations. I mean, this is the so-called negativity bias that we know from psychology already. So we are built in our cognitive and emotional shape. We focus more on negative experiences and aspects than on positive. It's basically our ingrained will to survive and to fight against all threats that are coming up to us. But this negativity bias, facing and focusing always or most of the times on negative aspects, has a peril. It's very difficult because if you are always focusing on the negatives, on the problems, on the crises, on all that things that are not working well, we start becoming, we are in a spiral, in a negative spiral of negative thoughts, negative feelings, negative emotions, and then losing prospects, losing perspectives. And this is why so many people at the end are becoming depressed or have those emotional symptoms of whatever it is in psychological terms. But because of that, I always give advice to my students is to focus on also not neglecting the negative things, because we have to become aware of them and we have to cope with them. It's necessary to acknowledge them. But on the other hand, we need to focus on the positive things. That means on our positive experiences, on our own strengths, on people that are around us, that love us, that support us, and also the positive things in our societies, the solidarity that is in place, that people really want to help and to support others. So, and sometimes there are these little small things in everyday life that we have to become aware of again, to have to be conscious that there is a lot of goodness in the world as well. And this helps us once we start focusing not only on the negative things, but also becoming aware of that there is a lot of good in our lives. We will start having this sense of empowering ourselves and empowering others, not to become, depressed or frustrated due to the current crisis and problems. We need that in order to become hopeful again. We need to nourish our soul, our cognitions, our thoughts, our feelings with positives, with positive experiences, with positive encounters with other people, with experiences of success also, that we do something and that we feel, okay, we could accomplish something and we could be successful, because these experiences give us again the soil and the resources in order to cope with new challenges ahead in the future. So it's not about just having a fun and a nice time, positive emotions and positive experiences. It's not about having pink glasses, but it's about having the resources, receiving the resources that helps us to cope with the negative aspects in life.
Absolutely. And before we flip the script and go into the positive work you're doing and the positive work out there around restoring hope and fostering hope, one thing I think I've noticed, certainly in my work in terms of the hopelessness of where I see it most, is people's own hope for being the best version of themselves seems to disappear. And people seem to have surrendered or compromised or come to a place of acceptance that I will never be who I want to be. I will never be the best version of myself because 1,000,001 reasons, life's too difficult or whatever. Have you seen that in your work? And if so, what do you feel has a huge impact on that?
Yeah, I mean, we experienced it within our family, for example. I mean, we have 2 kids. Well, they are already adults and 24 and 26 years of age, but we experience it and are experiencing it always. There's always situations where, especially young people, but not only young people, they stop believing in themselves. They stop believing that there is something possible. For example, in the case of our daughter, she became a nurse a couple of years ago, but she was always reluctant and struggling with the idea that she really would be able to give the exams and to be successful. And I think the biggest gift that we could give to our kids is to transmit to them that we still believe in them once they themselves are not able to believe in themselves anymore. Because in that situations where especially young people stop believing in themselves, they need people from outside. That could be their relatives, their family members, friends, but also their teachers and other people that tell them, I mean, you can do it. It's possible. I'm not saying that it will be easy. I'm not saying that it will be for sure that you can do it. But I'm convinced that you at least could be able to achieve what you really want. And to giving them this idea of possibility that they would be able and they have the capacity to do it, to accomplish it, even though there are a lot of things speaking against it because the exams are too difficult or the conditions are not easy, and whatever you can add to all these possible obstacles and difficulties. But if we transmit to other people that they can cope with all of that, and that it's, I mean, many people stop hoping because they are afraid of the delusion, disillusionment, or to be, because it hurts ourselves when we are hoping for something and we are then, how do you say it in English? Wait a minute, I have to think about the word. Disillusioned, or is it the right
disillusion,
word?
we become disappointed.
Disappointed, exactly. Because the fear, I mean, many people stop hoping or are reluctant to hope because they are afraid to be disappointed. But disappointment is part of hope. I mean, within the mere sense of hope, there is the possibility of disappointment. So to be resilient is to face the possibility of disappointment without giving up, giving up the possibility that on the one hand, you have the possibility to be disappointed, but on the other hand, you have the possibility to really be successful and to accomplish what you really wish. But this is always about believing. I mean, we have to be aware that when we talk about hope, we are talking about the future, what will happen, or what could happen in the future. And we have to be aware that everything that we think about the future is always about what we believe, because it's nothing sure about the future. There is nothing certain. It's a lot of uncertainty. It's a lot of openness of the future, which is great, because if the future is open, we have the opportunity to mold it, to do something, to be creative. But on the other hand, thanks to that the future is open and uncertain, it's about our own beliefs. And if we believe that it will be positive, it will be a completely different consequence than believing that it will be negative. So we have to work on our own beliefs about ourselves and about what is happening around us. And this is what I ask, it's my job at the university and at home with my kids and with my wife and friends and so on, is to transmitting the idea that there is a lot of goodness in the world, that everybody has some capabilities and strengths and resources to do important things in their lives. Not everything is possible alone, but together with other people. And this is a very important message, that loneliness is the biggest hope killer in general. I think we were educated that to cope with things always alone. We have to be the greatest and the best, and we have to be resilient. Everything on ourselves. But that's not the case. Hope is about interrelationship. It's about relationships, sorry. It's about connecting with other people, about supporting each other. That means we are able to do much, much, much more than we think is possible, not by doing it alone, not by ourselves, but by connecting with other people, by working together, by looking for help, asking for help, and relying also on the capabilities of other people. And this is what hope is all about. It's about believing in the good, believing in oneself, and trusting our own capabilities, but also the possibilities of other people that will be in place and will go this way with us, will be beside us, helping us and supporting us on this, with regard to our wishes and desires and future prospects in our life.
Yeah, I really liked what you said around, to summarize it in a oversimplistic form, but our hopes shape our world. What we're hopeful for will shape our thoughts, our actions, and the world that we create around us. And often not people embracing that hope is because of that fear of getting let down, getting disappointed, getting abandoned, and having all that hopefulness happen in the past and then becoming deflated like a balloon and not wanting that to happen again. And when, as you said, when we can embrace that being hopeful also means embracing the fact that we may be disappointed, and that's okay. It's like going into a relationship and not fully loving or allowing ourselves to fully love because we're too worried and scared about the abandonment and the pain. It doesn't work as well. So to really be hopeful, we need to really accept that the disappointment, and that's okay. And if we are hopeless, I only need to look at my life when I'm feeling a bit flat, and then I surround myself with other people. I get inspiration, I get ideas, I get compassion, I get a sense of hope can come back into the picture, and not isolating ourselves. So important. And in your work around hope, you've set up the Hope Barometer. Can you tell us a bit more about this?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, we started 15 years ago by asking people about their future hopes. And because at that time we started in Switzerland with this survey, an anxiety barometer and a worries barometer. So the other companies, other institutions were asking people about their worries and their, all the negative prospects ideas that they could have about the future. And we started to ask them the other way around. We asked them about their wishes and their desires and their positive perspectives and so on. And we, as I said, we started 15 years ago, every year asking the population in Switzerland about their positive wishes and thoughts about the future. And then we started to expand to other countries, because I started to present the results of the survey every year in our different conferences, scientific conferences. And then other people from other countries, researchers, colleagues, asked me, well, that would be a good idea to do also in our own country. And nowadays we are in, I think, more than 15 countries, in not only within Europe, but also in, let's say, Africa, South Africa, Nigeria, India, Australia, Japan, and also in the Near East, in Israel and Palestine and Jordan, and so and also in South America, Colombia. We're starting in Brazil this year again. And it's all about that. It's trying to find out, firstly, what are the positive thoughts of people, encouraging people to think positively about their own future. Positively doesn't mean that it's everything easy and everything fine, but it's about imagining a better life, imagining a better world. First of all, we wanted to encourage people to do that. Secondly, we wanted to understand how hope works. And we realized that hope, even though it has these core elements, as we said before, this wish and belief and trust, there are so many different forms of hoping that are culturally tinted or culturally with cultural specialities. So people in South Africa or in Nigeria indeed hope differently than people in France or in the UK or in Switzerland, and also differently from those in Latin countries, for example, in Portugal, Spain, Italy, or South America, Latin America. So we started to analyze what gives people, what transmits people hope. And these are, for example, in Latin countries, it's very much about human relationships. It's having a sense of community. In African countries, at least those we analyzed and looked for, it's very much about spirituality. It's about a sense of being connected to a higher power. That could be Christian, that could be also their own religions or spiritual teachings. And in Central Europe or Northern Europe, let's say, we realize that relationships are also very important, but it's more a sense of self-efficacy, of individuality, because we were socialized in that way in Europe. I mean, I'm South American, by the way. I grew up in South America, in Buenos Aires, in Argentina. So I can, understand these different forms of what gives us the energy for, thinking positively with regard to the future. And then that means we analyze and we looked at these different patterns of hope in different regions in the world, but then we also connected hope with other phenomena, with other variables, for example, resilience, or with well-being, or during the pandemic, for example, we asked people about what they do for coping with these difficulties, for all these difficult situations. And then we looked at if hope can give them really an inspiration for coping with difficult situations in lives. We also related that with values and with basic beliefs, and we know that being open for new ideas or new ways, but also feeling the necessity to help other people and to be more, have solidarity with each other. These are values that encourage our hope and shape our hope. And with regard to our basic beliefs, it's about believing in goodness, believing that the world can be changed in a positive way. And this is what every politician would like to transmit to anybody, to everybody, is to say, we can change something. And these are basic beliefs that we have to nourish and to shape in people. That means this Hope Barometer has been a huge project and is still a huge project where we go into very, very much details around hope, around our human capacity for coping, for well-being, for flourishing, for also overcoming, especially so many different situations that are threatening us in our daily lives.
Great project. If we can, in one of your writings, you've written sort of 3 hypotheses that I thought were very interesting. And I'm sure we could spend a whole podcast on each of them.
Yeah.
Ensuring that the interpretation is correct. I'm just going to read it out, and then maybe you can briefly give a bit of context. The first one: as long as concerns about a future full of crisis and conflicts have a stronger impact than the desire and longing for a sustainable, peaceful and just world, this will lead to increasing social and political polarization.
Yeah, I mean, this is what we are experiencing nowadays, politically speaking and socially speaking. I mean, we know that there are a lot of crises, and if we focus on that, if we only focus on the wars, all the things that, I mean, we can start talking about all what is happening in the world, but I think we should just focus on the main concept is, if we focus on the things that we can lose, we are not able to work on things that we can gain. If we focus on the fear that is within these threats of wars and of conflicts that we are facing in Europe, at least, but I think in other regions as well, and then respond to them because we need to safeguard ourselves. What we are losing is the focus on, for example, peace. What can we do in order to shape peace in our world? But it starts in our small environment. It starts in our family. If we focus on the conflicts that we could have, for example, in our families, with our kids or with the couples, whoever, and don't focus on the positive aspects of what could be better if we work together, if we believe in them, if we trust their own capability, whatever. If we focus, it's a general, it's a completely general idea. If we focus on the negatives, on the crisis, and we do something in order to avoid them or to cope with them only, and don't think about, okay, what do we really want? Do we want to safeguard ourselves? Do we want just to be safe and to protect ourselves? Or do we want to flourish? Or do we want to connect and to work together and think? And this is the big mistake that happens, I would say, so many times in history, and it's happening again nowadays. And this is what we should transmit. I could give you so many examples also now in Israel and Palestine of exactly this kind of thoughts, of worldviews. And my advice is for people is try to focus on what you really want. If you want peace, if you want justice, if you want sustainability, a sustainable world, a sustainable life, if you want to flourish, do something in order to achieve that. And don't just focus on what you want to avoid in order to just be safe.
And some of that comes back to your comments earlier around belief as well and trust. It's amazing how the mind, whatever we attend to, becomes important, even if what we're attending to isn't important. And
Exactly.
If we focus on the difference and we focus on the problems, we will become consumed by the differences and the problems, and we won't leave space to be able to look at the solutions and so forth.
Yeah.
So
it's so
important
clear.
to guide.
It's really so clear what is happening in the world nowadays is exactly this pattern that is repeating again and again over history of humankind. And if we are not able to learn about it, we will face so many problems ahead. But interestingly, hope is stronger than fears or deception. So that means it will come the time where people will start again saying, no, we don't want, and stand up, and they are doing it actually in some cases, saying, no, we don't want this anymore. We don't want to face these kind of catastrophes again and so on. And we want a better world, a different society, so on.
All right, the second one. However, it is not so much the fear of an uncertain future as the lack of belief in a better social future that is increasingly causing helplessness, a lack of prospects and indifference, especially among young people.
Exactly. I mean, we know that there is a lot of anxiety there regarding what is happening in the world. However, and this is the paradox, in most cases, in our European, at least, societies in Central Northern Europe, we are still living in a very nice environment. So people are able to work and to do their businesses and so on. That means these fears are present, but they are not affecting the people that much than the other aspect, which is the lack of positive prospects. I mean, and this is important to see again, and it's correlated or connected to what we said before, that there are two psychological mechanisms that are separated. We have to distinguish them. The first one is the fear about the negative future, about crises and catastrophes and everything else, on the one hand, and the prospects about the positive futures, about the possibility to flourish and to to develop oneself and to grow and so on. And interestingly, and this is what we found out statistically and very nicely in our research, is that what affects the people the most are not that much the fears. They affect them, but not that much as the lack of positive prospects regarding what they could achieve, what they could accomplish in their own life. That means the lack of positive prospects is stronger in terms of the consequences in our daily lives than the fears of the possibility of war or whatever crisis and so on and so on. I don't know if it's clear enough.
Yeah, and you don't know what you don't see, and if you don't have the modeling of this positive prospects in front of us, we can't build belief or a vision
Exactly
around what's possible, and hope doesn't have a chance to grow in that area. And then your last one, for this reason, new positive narratives of desirable visions of the future must be generated in both personal and social life, so that people are increasingly committed to common goals in their private, professional, and social lives.
Yeah, exactly. So as you said before, we have to be able to imagine a better world or a better life or something that we want to achieve in order to commit to it. If we are not able to imagine, but this happened over and over again in our history. I always bring an example. If we go back 100 years ago, I bring the example of Switzerland. Switzerland, 100 years ago, in the year 1925, was a poor country. We had hunger. We had really, in this country, Switzerland was a country of immigrants. So people emigrated from Switzerland to the US or to Americas in general, or to other countries, to Australia and whatever, because it was so difficult. It was a crisis time. So 100 years ago, people in Switzerland were not able to imagine how wealthy and how rich the country and the population would be at just 50 years later. So they were completely unable to imagine the richness and the wealth of Switzerland at the end of the 20th century. And the same thing is happening nowadays. We are at the beginning of the 21st century, and we are in midst of all these catastrophes and crises and all what is happening in the world. And we are not able, or at least very little able, to imagine that in 50 years' time, in the year of, let's say, 2070 or 2080, we will live in a sustainable, peaceful, and healthy society and world. Not only people, but also our natural environment will be reestablished and regenerated and so on. But the lack of possibilities, this lack of imagination and the courage to imagine such a wonderful world hinders us to engage and commit in doing something to achieve that. So we need to generate, because it's so difficult from within in these current situations that we are facing. It's so difficult, and also not only difficult, but it's, people don't, it's discouraging to imagine that something could be, but we maybe people believe that this is it's just utopian. It's just having a dream, and the dream is of course disappointed, and so on. But we need these images of a better future for oneself in case of, for example, an illness, or in case of a family crisis. We need these images that we could cope with our problems, we could cope with our current reality, to transcend that and to establish and realize a completely new society and world. And this is possible because we experienced it in the past. When we look back the last hundreds of years, I can go back to the 16th and the 17th century and realize that in every century our ancestors had to cope with huge crises: the French Revolution, the American Civil War, and there were so many crises. But history teaches us that if we have an image, if we have an idea of what we want to achieve, let's also look at the apartheid system in South Africa, or the race problem in the U.S. During or female women, the women rights, or the human rights, or the child rights. Everything was accomplished thanks to that there were people having this image and this idea that something could be completely different than it is at the moment. And this is something that we have to instill and transmit to young people and to people in general in order to do something for it.
And even on the individual level, if we can't imagine ourselves at our best, if we can't imagine ourselves loving fully, if we can't imagine ourselves performing in an act of self-actualization, if we can't imagine ourselves connected, we don't allow that belief to foster, and the trust towards getting there doesn't even have a chance. Yeah, so really, I can see in one of your book chapters you wrote, hope is the driving force behind optimal human development. I've got a clearer picture on that now, which is fantastic. Oh, thank you very much for your time, Andreas. And in coming towards the end, what would you pass on as helpful advice if you're to synthesize a lot of your thoughts, work, experiences into suggestions to foster hope? What would they be?
Well, it's all about very simple things. It's about focusing again on our positive experiences, daily experiences that we can experience in our daily lives. It's about believing that the future is always open, and we are able to shape it the way that we want. It's not always possible for us alone, and we have to, and this is one of the most important lessons, we have to do it together. We have to relate and connect to other people in order to shape our future together. Trust them and try to find out new ways, new ideas, and never give up, and be persistent, and be sometimes patient. We have to have patience because we are used to doing everything very quickly and everything should happen just now. We have to be patient sometimes, but concentrating on the positives and facing the obstacles and difficulties will help us. And this is a lesson that we have to know until the end of our lives. It's always possible to change something.
And that power of hope, sometimes when I think of this, I come back to the breaking the 4-minute mile. It was like impossible, deemed scientifically not possible. And suddenly one person broke it, and then Roger Bannister broke it, and then suddenly within a space of 12 months, lots of people had broken it, all because that seed, that, as you said, the vision, the belief, and then the trust in one's capacity to reach it, and then the end results took care of themselves. And I really thank you for this message, because we often are constantly just limiting our own vision, our own hope. And in doing so, we're limiting our families' opportunities. We're limiting our local communities' abilities and opportunities and possibilities. And not only our cultural, but also for future generations. And it starts with us. In coming towards an end, we always ask a book or film that's had a huge impact on you.
Oh, it's difficult to tell because I don't have TV at home. Oh, it's difficult to say in English. I mean, I love Dostoevsky. Dostoevsky was always my favorite writer, author.
And why?
Because he was so... firstly, the language, of course, how he writes, but he was so... He witnesses always the psychology of people, what happens in, the thoughts and feelings of people, and it's wonderful to see how people shape their world and their lives positively or negatively, just because they stick to their own thoughts without being able to just to break them through and go out of the box.
Time to flip the mic.
And lastly, a question that you have for myself.
Yeah, I think the question is, what can you do in order to give people hope? And I'm sure you're doing it already, but what could you do to transmit even more this belief in a better future, not only at an individual level, because I see that it's very important for you to give the people this empowerment and self-efficacy feeling to change and to shape their own lives, but how can we transmit hope in order to not only shape one's own life, but also to help other people and to be active in our communities in order to do something together for our society?
Yeah, I'll give that some thought beyond my answer right now. But I feel that a lot of what I do in some ways is built around that, in the sense that a coach's position, or at least a flow coach's position, is to hold the client and see them as their self-actualized self. And if we can hold that space for them, then they can subconsciously start to give themselves permission to have that vision, to have that belief, and slowly start to trust them. And if we can hold that vision for them, then it breathes life into it. And I feel as an organization, the Flow Center and the Flow conferences that we do is really there to breathe more hope, to help people realize that there is a greater version of themselves out there, and that in creating a federation of flow coaches, I feel that has a trickling impact to the individuals and towards groups as well.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, on the one hand, I agree completely. I mean, we have always to start by the individual, because we are convinced that it is always the individual, the person, that can change something for the better. However, what we have to avoid is that this drifts in the direction of, let's say, individualism or egoism, that I'm only thinking about myself, hedonic, or even also self-actualization just because myself. And that means we always have to be aware that we are connected to everybody else, to other people, to nature. And what I realize, and this is what I do with my students and in my courses, is the experience that we are able to change something positively with and for, not only with, but for others. For example, when my students go to work with people with cancer diagnosis, or work with people with psychiatric diseases, or do something with young children or with refugees in our city, when they experience that they are doing something for somebody else, some other people, they start gaining self-respect and self-worth so much that gives them, again, self-confidence and the sense of self-efficacy for themselves again. So it's a little bit paradox, but it is important to see the bigger whole, that we are embedded in society, in our planet, and that we should think about shaping our own life only. That is important, but not only. But we are able and should share with other people and do something for other people. Sometimes also in a very unselfish way. Because this gives us back so much. I mean, my students always tell me after this project that they do, that these projects opened up their mind so much, and they let them experience so much self-efficacy as well, but also the possibility I'm becoming much more than I thought I could become, becoming the best the version of yourselves, not because you are focusing on just on your own goals, but because you are starting to focus on other people and doing something for others.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, it reminds me of, I was coaching soccer the other day. And these little kids who were upset because they were losing at half time, and, and just helping them see their strengths and that there's hope for the second half. And their hope just brought so much energy into their action and so much energy into their mood. And I felt fantastic as a result of it. The team felt more connected, and it was a beautiful experience and shift of experience for myself and for each of them.
That's exactly the point. Yeah.
Yeah. And sharing that candle of hope. All right. Well, thank you very much, Andreas, for your time. It's been a really interesting conversation.
Thank you very much.
Keep up the good work.
For your invitation. It was a pleasure for me, and continue doing all this great work that you are doing. Congratulations for it. And thank you very much. And to everybody that is hearing, all the best for all of you.
There were many powerful ideas in this conversation, but 3 key takeaways stand out. Firstly, hope requires 3 psychological conditions, according to Dr. Krafft. Hope is not simply optimism or wishful thinking. As Andreas explains, hope emerges from 3 elements. 1, a meaningful desire, something we genuinely care about. 2, a belief that it is possible, even in difficult or uncertain situations. And thirdly, trust in resources, whether in ourselves, others, or larger systems that can help us overcome the obstacles. Without these 3 elements, hope struggles to take root. The second interesting point was the real threat isn't fear, it's the loss of positive prospects. One of the most fascinating insights from the Hope Barometer research is that fear alone is not what undermines people the most. What truly erodes well-being is the absence of believable positive futures. When people cannot imagine a better version of themselves or their societies, motivation fades, engagement declines, and hopelessness can take hold, especially among younger generations. In other words, hope grows when people can see a future worth striving for. Thirdly, hope is social, not individual. Perhaps the most powerful message from Andreas's work, what he ended on, is that hope is rarely sustained alone. Hope grows through connection, community, and shared purpose. And when people support one another, work toward common goals, and believe in each other's potential, hope becomes a collective force that fuels resilience, creativity, and progress. And in many ways, hope is not something we simply process, it's something we co-create with others. Thanks for listening to Flow Unleashed. If you want to learn more about flow, I've recently published my book, How to Find Flow, with Blink Publishing. In it, I guide readers through Ready, Steady, Flow, 3 simple steps for high performance, resilience, and personal well-being. You can find the link to my book in the podcast description. If you like this episode, please subscribe, and the next episode will effortlessly drop into your playlist. Bye for now.